very, very excited to be here today. I know it's the afternoon. I hope you all got your afternoon coffee. I prefer kind of excitement and engagement as much as possible, so we will see how much of that I can bring. So yeah, a little bit of a spicy topic here, and I don't expect everyone to agree with it. Let me maybe just get that out of the way. That is okay, right? What I am seeing and observing is just one person's experience. However, I think it is valid experience, and I do want to share it because I personally have found great success in embracing a mentality around this, and I wanted to share that with the rest of you and hope that it can help you as well. So with that, let's get into it. I mean, I feel like I just got introduced like the best I've ever been introduced before, but I will do a slight little intro, just particularly with people still trickling in. So I'm from Pittsburgh. If any other Yinzers are around, go Stillers. Yeah, baby, that's awesome. The booing is okay too, I accept that. And then, so yeah, over 10 years ago, I moved to Seattle. Yes, more cheersing, all right. Started at this wee small little company called Amazon. It was not small, but Fang only had one A at the time, and I was an engineer, and I watched mega explosion happen. I was at Amazon for about 6 years, about half as kind of baby junior college hire engineer, getting promoted once to like industry engineer before switching to TPM, which is a whole story I'm not going to get into right now, but it was nerve-wracking and exciting. It's like, what is this crazy thing? And we will kind of get into what it means to me now. And then left Amazon, again, about half the time as a TPM, went to the company formerly known as Facebook. I kind of reject the meta name, sorry. And after about 3 years at Facebook, went to Zillow, where, as was just mentioned, I founded the TPM function, and we've grown from 1 to over 60 in a decentralized organizational fashion. That's not really relevant to my talk, but we've not had layoffs despite some of the other things going on. I also have co-founded a startup that no one's ever heard of in between that, not very relevant to the story, but anyway, that's my background and experience, and you will see some of that, particularly if you share any of this background or experience, you might see some things coming through and be like, oh, I might get why he's saying that based on that. But if you haven't been there, don't worry. That's not important or required anyway. So yes, I am a blogger. I'm not sharing this to sell you anything. I have no ads. I have no monetization on my blog, nothing like that. I just love long-form writing because I'm a psychopath. And I just don't have the time, unfortunately. I could talk to you about this subject until you wanted to run away and never speak to me again. And I only have 30 minutes. So you will notice at some of the slides on the bottom right here, there's going to be like links to deep links not just to my blog, other citations as well. I think it's very important to cite our sources. So you'll notice that if you go, wow, that's interesting, I want to learn more. There you go. That's basically just an indicator saying you can go to my blog. It is my name. It is kind of hard to spell, but there it is, and it's on the TPM events if you forget. Add me on LinkedIn, whatever. You can then dive in deeper. So okay, I want to get into it. I also don't want to just talk at you the whole time, although I'm kind of instructed to do so. I would prefer more live Q&A as we went, but I know that that's not how this is running. So let's just do show of hands. I think the digital polling, I'm kind of old in certain technical ways, is kind of hard. So show of hands, and I encourage people to look around also to understand the demographics of doing this. If you are a program manager or technical program manager. I'm expecting most, but not all. All right, show of hands if your company has both product and program managers of some kind. Wow, okay, that was more than I was expecting. What about if you're a project manager? Product manager? Couple? Okay, anything else that I missed? No? Okay. All right, I only have 30 minutes. It's important I give you some TLDRs. Also, I basically like to present via meme. This is how I work, so there you go. This is a joke that made me chuckle quite hard. I then started sharing it internally in my Slack channel, and I accidentally upset multiple people, including VPs, for doing so. But I found it very funny for a few reasons. And let me first say, I personally believe that whether you agree or not with this meme, regardless, I think there's massive opportunity. That if you really kind of think about this, starts to become more clear. So I'm not saying that, you know, APIs aren't real, data isn't real, or anything like that. Of course it is, right? I'm just saying that domains and roles are two different things. And we've already embraced this with some other things, like from the engineering side, such as a full stack engineer, and I don't really understand why we've gone away from that as PM variants as a group. We actually used to have this early on in the days of Microsoft, and I didn't work there, and I kind of can't believe I'm quoting Microsoft as a model for anything, no offense. But I actually think that they had a decent model there. So domains are different than different job functions. Also, levels are different than different job functions. To me, those are two of the main takeaways I take from the earlier meme slide. So you could summarize this and say be a full stack PM. I think I heard at least one earlier talk. By the way, earlier talks have been fabulous. I'm not trying to necessarily disagree with some. I just think it's interesting. You might notice some of what I'm about to say and what others, and layering them in, I think is an interesting exercise. I encourage it. So someone else mentioned this phrase before. I weirdly haven't heard it that much, and I kind of want to popularize it a bit again. So yeah, this is important. I want to make sure that's clear, and I want to make sure why it's important is clear. And also, I don't want to just say, okay, go do this thing, and good luck. Let me explain to you, hey, here's how I think it should be approached and what's been successful for me. So yeah, if I'm going to mention full stack, we kind of got to mention the classic meme of engineering. All right, that's not what I'm saying, just to be abundantly clear. You're going to hear me kind of argue with myself on stage, because often the way I think is I say something, and I'm like, I got 5 buts for you, Straker, about that. So that's going to be a trend throughout this talk. But yeah, yes, we're technical. Yes, we should be able to do the back-end side, but the front-end side is important as well. Speaking kind of an engineering language with that. These next couple of slides are somewhat humorous, but somewhat less so. Another show of hands. Who has heard of like PM or TPM theater, this phrase? Very few. Okay, that is more surprising for me as well. This phrase is becoming much more popular, and I think it is accurate and real. We are seeing Jen in the introductory keynote talk. She showed the SAFE, if both were here with that and saw that, right, solution. That, to me, is a great example of often something used as PM or TPM theater. Coming in with a solution saying we need the most technical, complex process ever, so complex that you can't possibly understand it, but don't worry, I went to a conference and I understand it. That to me is all this meme is trying to say, right? So for some reason, our industry, I think, has gone down this direction where many people are getting instructed to kind of be complex, when actually it's our job to do the opposite. We're supposed to bring clarity from ambiguity, not add to the existing pile of ambiguity. So that's one main reason why I'm sharing this. Unfortunately, it isn't as popular, but my kind of tagline phrase that I like for this is I don't bring process, I bring efficiency. And maybe process is involved in bringing that efficiency, but that's a separate thing. So don't do this. Secondly, this one is probably the most least humorous part of this talk. We are seeing industry contraction right now. We're seeing layoffs, we're seeing hiring slowdown. This tweet, I know it was taken out of context for Airbnb. I'm not at Airbnb, nor have I ever worked there, so if you do work there, I would love to actually hear more the inside scoop of what this was like. But this was more product and product marketing management getting merged into product marketing management, per my understanding. Not impact to TPM, which is also separate there. I am ex-Meta, or company formerly known as Facebook, and we saw Instagram talking about actually merging TPM into PM there recently. I think that was earlier this March. Except in my experience there, as a TPM, I was in reporting to TPMs up through a TPMO, assigned to an individual team, doing things like product design for that team. I was actually very much like a technical product manager. And then, interestingly, halfway through my experience at Meta, product management got introduced, and they reported directly into engineering at the director level, and they focused broadly across. And I was like, wait, to me, that's TPM work. So now, in order to do TPM work, I need to transition into product management, but then that became a whole mess. So I kind of just pissed off and ran to Zillow. But what's interesting about this is I actually think, even though this is the technical accurate thing that's happening here, I do view it as reversed, as more product getting merged in with TPM, at least based on my experience. And last but not least, I know startups are also saying some things, right? This is just a recent tweet that was put on blast in one of the many blogs I subscribe to about, hey, we're noticing that product managers aren't as interdisciplinary enough as they wanted, so stopping hiring of them. That word is a great word, interdisciplinary. I think that's TPM's superpower. I hope, if I remember, I'm going to use it a lot as we go throughout this. So I just think it's important that we talk and at least acknowledge the situation that we're in. So now we can go back to more humor throughout the talk, but understand that that's going on. I want to be really clear about this. This gets into my, hey, Straker, I'm going to argue with myself while live on stage in front of you all. I'm not saying work harder, not smarter. I'm probably going to correct myself multiple times throughout this. However, I do think there is interesting opportunity per the initial premise of my talk. Now, some of you might say, okay, wait a minute, Straker. I already feel like Charlie from Always Sunny all the time. I don't know. Another show of hands. Past 2 weeks, have you felt like Charlie? The fact that not everyone's hand went up is blowing my mind right now. Past 2 hours is more like it, in my opinion. So yes, empathizing with this, yet still what I said, let's try to get into it a little more to explain what I mean by that. This is funny. However, I swear that this was all of my first one-on-ones in my first 90 days at Zillow as the first TPM. They didn't even bother to change the phrasing of the question. It literally was, what is it you would say that you do here? And I'm like, okay, Bob. For those that don't know, it's Bob and Bob. Okay, I don't know if I can do this live right now, but I would love if you, maybe if we don't have mics, if you can even shout, like 1 or 2 of you. I'm curious for other people's opinions. If you were to define very quickly what a TPM is or does, can you share that? I see one hand immediately up over there. Yes.
I make your life easier.
That is such a good answer. Does anyone have a worse answer? That's better? Yeah, good job, yeah. I see another hand up over here.
You just might want to shout it out by the time I get to.
An anti-entropy agent.
You guys are too skilled at this.
Hi, I'm Pushpa. I'm a TPM. I usually don't do anything. I usually just warm up my tea, go to meetings, and if any of you is not behaving, I report it to my hiring manager, who is the director of data and analytics.
That was perfect. Thank you. All right. I want to flip this around too. We only had a few people raise their hands saying they were product managers. I did get a little cheat sheet. There are product managers here at this conference as well. Anyone willing to do the same thing, the good or the bad, both are welcome, for product managers? Definition.
An entropy agent.
We make people's lives easier.
Yeah, okay. That's actually fascinating. I wasn't expecting that one, but I like that. The same definition. One more, anyone else? Yeah?
I write PRDs and I disappear.
Hey.
And I only come back after you launch my feature, and I tell you it's wrong.
Thank you. One more, okay, you look too excited. After this, we gotta. Oh, to end up with KPIs? You write PRDs without KPIs. Oh, that's an important. That's also very good. Yes, that is an important distinction. Kind of going back a little bit to the Airbnb tweet, right? Like, it is interesting to note that in the tweet, the audience clapped. I just find that interesting. So I'm not here to bash product management. That's not what I'm here to do. But I'm glad we had our moment of fun with that. Is anyone familiar with this? Yes, I'm seeing lots of hands. I'm seeing lots of nodding. So this is from Pragmatic Engineer, who is a resource that I highly, highly recommend and almost always love. Keyword almost. Because I actually think that this blog post did an immense amount of damage to TPM as a function in our industry. And I didn't recognize it for a while at first. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's so great. Look at that. It's clearly saying, oh, why, what, who, when, how, blah, blah, blah. And then it started getting weaponized. I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but I experienced actual weaponization of this Venn diagram. And the reason why I dislike it so much is because just imagine you're a very successful leader at your company. Let's go with an engineering leader at your company. And you're a director, you're a VP or something like that, and you're a product manager, regardless of what level, comes in and says, here's what you're going to do. I don't know about you, but I will probably just respond with no. Just as a human being, right? Like, don't that's not how relationships are formed. That's not how successful teams are built. That just doesn't make sense. So what I really hate about this Venn diagram is how far away the circles are. They're just not close enough. And the reality is, high-performing teams, you intersect more than you don't. And if you actually strive towards this, you just can't accept this. It puts us in a box. And I don't know about you, but I think we are interdisciplinary, like I said earlier, and don't put us in a box. So something that didn't quite come up, although a little bit with the intro, we heard it, that I often hear is, well, PMs focus on strategy, and TPMs focus on execution. And to some extent, that's true. And to some extent, that's okay. Earlier in my career, I actually was much more okay with this. Later in my career, where I am now, I've actually gone, wait a minute. Are we actually saying that it's a different role or different function that does these things, or is it just different levels of experience? And so I argue that that's actually the case. We're not actually saying it's two different roles, but it's two different levels. So I don't know if anyone's heard the phrase, execution eats strategy for breakfast. I strongly agree with that phrase. However, I have an addendum to that, where execution without strategy is kind of like putting a blindfold on, spinning around 3 times, and trying to pin the tail on the donkey. Hence, I couldn't resist a Shrek meme here. But I don't know about you, like, I don't work at a FANG company anymore. We don't have unlimited resources to just guess and check our way through life and everything like that. We have to be more intentional with our actions and our execution, i.e., be more strategic. So what am I saying instead? I'm saying that it's not different jobs or different functions that actually do these things. The one thing I really want to encourage is if we actually combine these powers together, you end up with Captain Planet here, who goes and saves the world, right? So yeah, I don't think it's separate jobs. Now you might say, here's a but, and it's going to sound like a sales pitch. It's not my intent. You might say, well, Straker, if you do that, then the checklist of defining what a TPM is going to be monolithic pages long, and no one's going to read it. I disagree. And the reason I can say I disagree is because I've gone and defined TPM as a job function with a ladder guide. I've got like 3 buts to this. I disagree with pay bands, and I disagree with the promotion-based setup that most tech companies run. However, with those things acknowledged, we are in the situation that we are in. I think it's definable. And yes, I have actual content for these cells. This is just my summary across levels. And if you are struggling to see this, that's fine. It's on my blog. It's free. Use it. Hate it. Either way is fine. It's not that many rows. I don't think that what I just said prevents clear definition of our role. So you might now say, okay, fine, you can, but is that actually correct? And apparently I'm weird. I like to do a weird thing. Well, no, sorry, that's normal. I've known I was weird for a long time. But something that is weird that I've only just learned is unique and weird to me is one of my favorite references in all the world is the dictionary. And I think Merriam-Webster is a great book. Highly recommend it. So this is one of the few slides I'm going to actually read what's on here. A program is a plan or system under which action may be taken towards a goal. And a product is something such as a service that is marketed or sold as a commodity. I actually don't want to explain for 1 second, just like think about that for 1 second, because I feel like Merriam-Webster just said this. And I also feel like there's not a product manager I have ever met that doesn't know this already. I've brought this up to so many product managers, they're like, yeah, like, what's your point? And I'm like, oh my God. Because I share this with TPMs, they're all like, whoa, I don't know. And I don't get it. That's it. That's a little bit, I've been confused by the difference in population of reaction to the same sentence. So what I want you to help take away earlier when I was saying like why and how this is important and all of that, it just feels like remember when you were 5 and you played that Uno reverse card? Remember how cool it felt? It really does feel good. That's what I'm trying to encourage here. So I've gone and I did things in reverse order because I love to do that because my brain is kind of wild. I went very detailed and tactical and was like, hey, look at this complex ladder guide. Don't worry, I got it all figured out. But I think actually I jumped the gun a little bit. Let me zoom back out to go back to explaining, hey, Here's my definition of TPM. Just a quick call out, I really loved Ed's talk earlier about the archetypes. I'm also going to get into archetypes here. Just because they're not the same archetypes is not meant as strong disagreement or anything like that. We made these slides independently, separately ago. So I also empathize. Other people have talked about, hey, it's really hard when Ma or Pa come and say, what is it to say that you do here? That question's really hard to answer. However, I want to answer it to you all, who you work in tech. You're more familiar with it. And I have actually found that, yeah, you can say full stack PM, people that work in tech, excuse me. But I have found a picture's worth 1,000 words here. And I found every time I start talking, I can't shut up. And I go laundry list and long, and it gets too complicated, right? Before I go on, I have a very, very important disclaimer to mention. This happens even internally at Zillow, where my coworker, John Cannon, who is actually the creator of this triangle, shared this and all of that. I have his full permission to be using it. This is also mentioned on my blog. He is awesome, and we did end up bringing it into Zillow together, but I just want to call him out and mention that. Yeah, I don't know. People love to gloss over that part, but I do think it's important. So what is this infographic? Let me explain it. The point is that if you were to plot yourself within it, everyone is capable across all three of these vertices. You must be technical, you must be able to do project and process management, and to some extent, you must be able to do product management. And boy, oh boy, when John showed me this, I was like, I didn't know anyone agreed with me about this. So okay, you're plotted within it, but you're not meant to only work within one vertex. If you're doing that, you are likely not leveraging your interdisciplinary superpower of being a TPM. You are likely more maybe being just an architect or just a project manager. Kind of ignore a little bit the title of product manager here, given my talk, but the point is instead, it isn't that you're necessarily doing all three all at the same time, but you're in different projects, in different contexts, you're going to gravitate towards two over all three, and you can focus on those, and you are allowed to have your preferences. And so this leads to 3 archetypes that I'm just checking my time. I think I'm a little behind on, so I'm going to go kind of quickly through. You have your bridge between product and engineering, you have your technical executor, and you have your definer of technical direction. Sorry, I just went through really quickly. If anyone's trying to take photos, again, this is all free on my blog, so you can get it, and it'll be better to have the source image anyway. So a really fun, interesting exercise that you can do is actually, and I highly recommend everyone do this, plot yourself within the triangle and do it over time at different points in time and see how it changes, right? Oh, well, while I was working on this project, did it make more sense for me to be here? And then maybe when I came over to this project, I moved to another one. So this is just me as an example. Yes, I did have a mohawk in the past, and yes, that was a long time ago. Like to use this more than any picture instead. But when I started at Zillow, and I started actually doing this, I lived much more up here in the technical executor camp. I can't quite give a true story of my first day because it's my interview question, we're sort of actively interviewing, but it was basically like, here's a big problem, go deal with it. And I liked that ambiguity, I liked diving in, I got a broad sense of our distributed system, and I was able to go solve it. But in the past few years, it's just made more sense for the company and my role to be more in this definer of technical direction pillar. We went through layoffs before most others in November of 2021, where we shut down our iBuying business. We were directly buying and selling homes. And I produced the first technical strategy for the company to come out of that and still solve the customer problem in a different way. And since then, it's just turned out that what the company needed most was for me to live here. So here's more kind of arguing with myself on stage. Are you saying be in the center and do it all? Hopefully, it's clear the answer is no. I have worked with some people that do, and they are 1 in a million, and they are awesome. I'm not saying work harder, not smarter. I am saying, though, be comfortable across, because I've noticed something really interesting. So as we've grown at Zillow, about once a year, we have everyone, we get together, whether it be in person or remote, and we have everyone plot themselves semi-anonymously using just colored dots. You can do it with faces if you want. Some people want to be anonymous, some don't. And just say, plot yourself where you are. And now for 4 years in a row, I have seen this trend where about twice as many people are in the bridge between product and engineering as there are technical executors. And then twice as many again, there are technical executors as there are definers of technical direction. And I personally believe this is why, going back to my funny cat exploding meme, This is why we see so many program managers or technical program managers surprised that I'm saying, hey, focus more on strategy, which is typically aligned more with product. Because less people happen to be living in this section, despite the fact that it's incredibly important. So why? Why is this happening? I have a few hypotheses, and that's all these are. So if you disagree, please share in the Q&A. Hopefully I can have time for that. But hypothesis number one is we need more people in the definer of technical direction. I also think, I've talked a lot about, hey, let's not conflate career growth with different roles and things like that. And I do think it makes sense, okay, you know, my role has grown over the past few years. Maybe what we're seeing is almost an anecdotal scatterplot correlated with levels and where people are in their careers. Maybe. It doesn't quite correlate one-to-one, at least at Zillow, but I still think it's an interesting hypothesis. And I think being in that definer of technical direction requires one thing that the others don't, at least nowhere near the same amount, and that is strategy. I love the word strategy. I'm going to talk about it, but unfortunately, there's a lot of examples of bad strategy, so I'm going to have to give a few details about it. So based on what I did before, I'm going to do it again. Let's go to Merriam-Webster. It's such a great resource. Other people should use it. Because, oh my gosh, I have asked so many people to define strategy, and just the stuff I hear blows my mind. When Merriam-Webster uses 5 words, a careful plan or method. I gave some more on this slide. Don't worry about it. The meme is a joke. Like, it is a careful plan or method. That's it. So now I need to do this unfortunate thing of what isn't strategy, which I think is, unfortunately, much more relevant and common what I hear instead. A mental framework. I've used the opposite of this multiple times just to prove a point. A mental framework is not strategy. It actually doesn't even belong in the same sentence. A mission statement. Now, I like mission statements. I think they're good. Anyone recognize what this one is? Meta's. Yeah, Facebook's. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good mission statement. Maybe it's not true, but you know, maybe it is. If it is true, it's a good one. Oh man, goals. Call this one. Now I'm gonna get all mad at myself for even putting this here. I like legit get angry seeing this. This is one of the most common examples of what I see people define as strategy that's not. And also, like, increase revenue by 200%, which, who here has like working under an increased revenue goal while working for a for-profit company, which is legally required to deliver value to shareholders, and if you don't, you go to jail. Anyway, bad goal. Goals are not strategy. Let's not mix that up. Objectives. I made this one up for Zillow. Decent objective. I like objectives. I'm not anti-objectives, but there's nothing careful about a plan or method here. This is just like a North Star, maybe more of a vision or an objective. And last but not least, a list of all the things. Yeah, I thought this one was gonna land. I see a lot of TPMs falling into this trap, and knock it off, okay? I am serious. If you haven't heard of the term anti-roadmap, that is so much better than a roadmap. Start doing it. And strategic planning is not real either. Great Harvard Business Review video that completely, in like 7 minutes, debunks anyone that uses this term, and I love sending it to people that use it. Watch it. I think it's good. Yeah. So don't conflate these things. I'm not saying these things aren't valuable in their own way, shape, or form. Some of these were good examples. Some of these were not good examples. But none of these are strategy. I really like this image here. I'm not saying this is a good strategy, but it's working. Any one of them steps off and ruh-roh. Well, you know, as long as they stay on there. So I used this meme. I couldn't believe I found this. I chuckled so hard. Thank you for laughing. I used this meme, or when I found this meme, I wanted to explain, you know, just because I'm saying, hey, do more strategy, doesn't mean that it's an only single person job. If you already have other people at your company doing strategy, a lot of you raised your hands saying that you had TPMs and PMs at your company, you can still help. This is a silly example of that, but you can still do that. I'm not saying replace their job, I'm saying work together. To the earlier image, not meme, of high-performing teams actually intersecting more, right? That's an example of what I'm trying to say. So, okay, What's actually stopping you from doing this? The best person to execute on a strategy is the one who helps define it, so go and help define it. If TPMs are masters of execution, wield that as your mechanism to get in the room. I will say, whenever I have stepped in to help and now lead, anyone that comes and says, I would love to help you with this, my answer's never been like, no. My answer's like, oh, thank God, right? Like, I think most people feel this way. It is a lot, and depending on the scope in which you're trying to work on, it is near impossible for a single person to possibly run it and manage it. I mean, many people are working at companies of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 plus people, right? To say that you can't help contribute to this at your own scale, I think is wild. And it applies to startups too. I'm not trying to say that it's only at the mega companies. So maybe a few of you feel like you're already doing this. Actually, one more show of hands. Does anyone feel like they do this commonly? Very small number. On the one hand, let's fix that. On the other hand, that's why I'm giving this talk today. I've personally found the representation here to just be very small, and I really think this is the most important thing that TPMs should be doing that I'm not seeing them do today. So if you were one of the few raising your hand, I'm sorry, but now you've got some new rules that apply to you. You have to help bring this around in your own way, be it your team, your company, you being on stage here next year, not me. I don't want to come do the same talk again. I want it to be a nothing burger. We all did it, and we all started doing that, right? So yeah. So I think this is my last slide. I think I'm running a little over last slide. I want to get to questions. I don't want to just leave you without any good examples of strategy. I gave a list of bad ones. Let me give a little bit of what a good strategy looks like. So a good strategy is going to require buy-in from the top. You can have the best strategy in the world. If your C-suite or leadership or whoever that is doesn't agree with it, it's not going to be prioritized. It's not going to be executed on. So make sure that you are working with leadership in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like for you to get this. 2, execution still eats strategy for breakfast. Just because I'm saying to do this doesn't mean stop with the execution side. Figure out what the operating model is going to be to actually execute on it. Be that you need to appoint a directly responsible individual or a single-threaded leader or whatever mechanism works for you in your company, make sure you have that lined up. This ties in really nicely. I already kind of said it doesn't have to be a mono-person activity. Make sure you have the interdisciplinary contribution to help here. I do want to emphasize one other thing. I have heard people talk about like product viability, user desirability, technical feasibility to disambiguate between product design and engineering here. All 3 of those things are very important to have as part of your strategy, but they are not separate strategies in and of themselves. So work with your partners across different functions, which I know you all are great at doing. Like, to me, it's funny. This is super important, and I feel like I've probably spent too much time on something. You're all like, yeah, no problem. Make sure it's known and understood. So you can have the best strategy. You can work with your key partners across functions. You can work with your leadership. If it's not shared and it's not visible to all and they aren't all kind of understanding it, it's also going to be poorly executed on. And last but not least, I kind of already said this, make the painful cuts. A good strategy is how you win. That's my own definition, not Merriam-Webster's. But how you win is rarely do all the things like medium well, right? It's usually pick something and do it well. Oh, I had one more, sorry. Be comfortable with evolution. Strategy is not a waterfall exercise. This one too, don't expect this to be too controversial with this audience or anything like that, but yes, be strategic, but things change. Depending on the space you're working in and ChatGPT gets launched, it's okay to evolve and take that into account if that's critical to your business and you view it as a strategic threat. In other words, don't be Kodiak when the iPhone came out. Great story in Escaping the Build Trap where the iPhone came out and they did annual planning and they had just done it. And they're like, oh, we'll deal with it next year. RIP, right? So be strategic, but also still be agile. So in summary, this is kind of it, right? If you act more strategic, the P in your title doesn't matter. You could be called a technical program manager, you could be called a technical product manager. I'm not advocating for title changes here. Based on Merriam-Webster, I believe technical program manager is the right definition of the superset. But regardless, this is how I think you up-level and grow yourself as a TPM. So with that, thank you. I would love to hear some questions. Yeah, we got one here. Sorry, there was one right here.
If I missed that hand, can you raise it again? That was you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great presentation. My name is Sandeep Podel. The question I have for you is, when you try to map the product manager and then the TPMs from the product and the program side, the challenge we have is we just have one TPM for the organization. TPM is a leadership role, but the product managements are like too many product people are there. So I think at the team level, at the program level, I think product people must, or they have to do program management, because one or two TPM in an organization cannot manage program for all the team. So I think towards the end of the presentation, you touched upon it, like you have to get buy-in from the leadership. And then I think that leadership aspect is missing in your presentation. Otherwise, how would you define the number of TPM, just one or two TPM, and having like 20 or 30 product managers within an organization do the same level of work?
Sorry, you're saying actually enacting like organizational transformation in terms of role consolidation? How do you do that?
No, I'm saying that technical program manager and technical product manager, I think they are going to be two different things, because technical program managers operate at the leadership level. And you have just limited number of TPMs in an organization. But you have like product managers are in abundance. It's not like one product managers work for like the entire product. There would be like several product managers who work to build one product. But there will be only one TPM who works for the entire organization, or just few of them.
My point is the industry cannot agree on this. And at Facebook, it was the total reverse of what you just said, the complete opposite. And the fact that the industry can't agree on this only goes to show that I actually think every time we're explaining what one does versus the other, we're bringing our bias from these different companies. And you'll have person over here saying, this is product, and you'll have person over here saying, no, that's program, this is product, and we keep flipping back and forth. So I'm not actually trying to talk about like organizational transformation. To me, this is not the audience to talk about that. What I am trying to say is, just as a TPM, I personally believe that we are also seeing some industry examples of consolidation, regardless of whether or not it makes the most sense for you right now in your very specific context of where you are. I do think this is a strong skill strengthener for you in your long-term career. Hopefully that makes sense, because I've basically just experienced both sides of it.
Straker, I have a bit of a monopoly, so I'm going to ask a question, and I'll get back to you folks. So, so it may or may not be inspired from true events, but as I've, in my roles, tried to execute on strategies or build the strategy or write the strategy, because of the distinction, as the gentleman here pointed out, of product and program, it has caused a stir of emotions. And I've been in a lot of uncomfortable situations. Of course, you can work around it, but because some organizations tend to be so complex, you need buy-in, people have their own biases, and et cetera, et cetera. How would you say we can overcome those and continue to be executors? Because trust me, I love it, and I want to continue doing that.
That is such a good question, and I don't think I can globally answer it for every context, right? In certain contexts, it's going to be, develop strong relationships with your product partners and make sure that they're informed about some of the decisions that they're making. This is going to be such a contrived basic example. I have more real ones, but I found anytime I talk about Zillow, it involves such like domain knowledge around real estate, it tends not to land. So I'll use a very high level contrived one, right? If a product manager doesn't have the background to help understand that, hey, this additional 1% of customer value that we're going to deliver is going to take twice as much amount of time. I also kind of hate estimations, but ignore that for 1 second. Like, help them to help understand that, to go, hey, does this cost benefit make sense, right? And I think that can be a useful way to get into the room. And I am also speaking about slightly different stages in our careers, right? As you hit different points in your career, I don't think you're going to have to like dip your toe in before the door closes and then force your way in, right? Because like once you can actually be there more naturally, I do think the answer is going to evolve a little bit and change. But at least from my perspective, what I have found is if you can get on certain high impact projects, so very early in junior in my career, I was the TPM to help launch the first Prime Day for Amazon, otherwise known as Amazon's garage sale. But it made over $1 billion in 24 hours, and now we have it every year, right? And I was pretty junior. And I was lucky to have a really strong, experienced product manager helping me with more of the front end, and I was able to work with her and develop a strong relationship to do that. So it was a little less of me putting my foot in the door and me going like, holy cow, you're inviting me into this room? But if you, either way, right, there's other situations besides what I said, capitalize on that opportunity and try to create the opportunity to make it happen. So wanted to give a little bit of a high-level example with at least one backed. Yeah. I know there were a lot of other hands raised. Yeah, there's one here too. Here, let's go red shirt and then over here.
All right. I think your triangle kind of touched on this, but I think in your voiceover you talked a lot about the overlap between the P, the product and the program piece. But what you didn't touch on as much was where that blends with like a tech lead or an architect role in that bottom right corner.
Yes.
And I wonder, like, is there a world where like we still kind of have these three unique focuses, but then the TPM at kind of, to this other gentleman's point, at kind of like the higher leadership level, bridges the gap between all of those functions and can serve as, you know, the right blend of product expertise, project expertise, and tech lead or architect expertise?
You might be entirely right. I think this also gets into something I intentionally tried to avoid talking about, which is organizational modeling in terms of like the GM model versus, you know, the functional model where like design reports into design, marketing reports into marketing. And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other or anything like that. I think like most things, it depends, context matters, who the people are matter, and things like that. So yeah, I'm not trying to say there needs to be less people. Whether or not they truly belong as different functions, I struggle with just based on my experience of one FANG company saying one thing and the other FANG company just saying the complete opposite. Like, what do I do with that? So I do think there's some leveling there as well, right? Like when we say, well, this one person spans across all of this, to me, I just feel like you describe someone more senior and more experienced and have more background. But yes, I certainly am not saying that tech leads get eliminated. Oh my gosh. I mean, I sometimes fill in, but I rely on my tech leads on a minute-by-minute basis. It's not even daily, right? And depending on my project and things like that. So I just wanted to really make sure I made that part clear. I do want like there to be a bit of a takeaway. I don't have all the answers here. I'm more trying to share, hey, I've experienced something kind of odd and weird, and I'm noticing what's going on in the industry right now, and I do think we should be cognizant and thinking of, are there solutions and things we can do to not bury our heads in the sand, but at the same time try to help up-level ourselves and our companies that we work in.
Hi. My question is more around how do you craft your job in a way where, as a TPM, you're more responsible for execution, but you bring in those product management responsibilities? You did give an example of strategy, but that's probably once or a few times a year. But what can you do throughout the year so you know you're incorporating more of, say, product management principles, or just have a direct contribution?
Yeah, I can give a maybe completely different example because this came up with me today. So if we are masters of execution and we are fundamentally the DRI or STL, sorry, directly responsible individual or single-threaded leader for something that we are executing on, we are responsible for the success of our launch, then it's not just about everything going smoothly and launch happening well, right? We want to actually have a successful launch for our customers, be they internal engineers, be they external, things like that. Now, I'm not trying to say be a designer, but I do think there's some amount of in your execution when you're compiling, like, are we on track? Make sure that like it doesn't just end up being, you know, a very poorly formed kind of Lego piece that doesn't actually solve the problem that we initially set out to do. I don't know about everyone's situation. Some people would say, oh yeah, the product manager's head would roll for that. I personally have been in situations where no, like mine would very much not be okay if I didn't step in there. So that could end up being really small things as part of execution. One thing that came up for me today is we're launching a net new product that doesn't exist in the industry, so we don't have strong competitive things to compare to, is terminology. And oh boy, are engineers opinionated about terminology. And we have gone a direction where we're innovating. We're launching something that doesn't exist in the industry, yet we are afraid to call something new something new. We want to reuse a term, And based on me actually walking through like the actual experience, I really felt the pain of us trying to just avoid calling this new thing something new, and instead actually, we tried to kind of square peg round hole it with a different term, and now we have a thing called clients, but don't worry, your clients have clients, but then if you add a new client, that's different from adding the client to a client. And what I just said was a real sentence and accurate, and actually the message I had to deliver to my leadership team to be like, we can't launch like this. It's wild. Like, it won't land, right? Like, imagine, I serve agents and professionals at Zillow. The median age is 55. They are not a tech-forward population. Imagine 2 people on a team being like, add a client. I did add a client. No, don't add a client to a client, add a client. Like we've used the same term twice to mean 2 different things, and it doesn't work. So I know it's a very tactical answer, but I think you were looking for something a little more technical, so that's why I picked something super recent from my brain, and that has more design and product impact than it does engineering impact, although comically, when I shared this in Slack Async last night, like the whole engineering team, the amount of like party emojis and stuff I got in reaction to was high. So I was still in the engineering corner there, but yeah. So I hope that at least gives an example, yeah. It might be over time. I would love to get more questions, but I think we're over time, so we can wind it down. I'm around. If people want to ask me more after this, I'd be very happy to chat. Thank you all.